Hello and welcome once again to the Raging Introvert. Last episode, we uh, looked at a journalist who was trying to misdirect and obfuscate what the true meaning of the Second Amendment was, trying to make it look like people who believed in the rights protected by the Second Amendment were extremists, and those who wish to push meaningless gun control are somehow actually in line with the Second Amendment and its original purpose. Today, this episode, we're going to look at something a little different. Instead of a journalist, we've got an actress here, and she's going to talk a little bit about her thoughts on gun control. Not the history, the background, the legal and constitutional discussion about it, because let's be frank, a lot of people don't care about any of that crap. Instead, she's going to talk about, her feels and propose some solutions to gun violence in our nation.
Hey, Grockites.
Now, I don't watch much TV, so I don't know what the hell a Grockite is. But for some reason, it makes me think either of Grognak the Barbarian here, or my personal favorite.
They call him Korgoth.
But I don't think she has enough sense of humor to have meant anything like that.
It's time to talk about gun control.
Well, that's good. There's one of two possibilities. We could either have an honest, open discussion about finding common ground to help stop gun violence in the U.S., or any other time a liberal talks about having a discussion, it could, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Me Too, sexual assault, whatever, it could just devolve into accept the liberal perspective or you're a sexist, racist, homophobe monster. We'll see. We'll see. I'm going to keep my hopes up. Maybe she's different than all the other ones.
Yet another mass shooting at a school has captured the attention of this nation. This time, 17 people were killed. Teenagers, children cut down, a geography teacher, a football coach, an athletics director losing their lives so that they could save the lives of children. Images of children running with their hands over their head, hiding and crying.
So this is not a encouraging way to start off a discussion. Yes, we know it happened. It was bad, and we want to stop it. But when you go more and more into detail, I'm starting to think that it's you're looking at this more from an emotional perspective, and you're trying to sensationalize it as opposed to coming up with a logical approach to stopping this problem. But maybe that's just me. Let's continue.
A tragedy of this magnitude leaves us all shocked and heartbroken. The images of those 17 faces will not leave my head. But I said that about the last shooting and the last faces, and indeed, we forget.
You might speak for yourself and the Grok Nation, but responsible gun owners don't forget. And they are just as willing now as they were with previous shootings to pursue actual legislative and societal measures that may help stop school shootings and any other mass shootings. The problem is the people on your side, the left, keep proposing meaningless gun regulations that actually won't stop anything. And we come to an impasse there because you're not actually interested in solving the problem. You're interested in, for whatever reason, attacking gun ownership. And that's the problem. But I'm interested to hear your actual concrete proposals because you make it sound like you've got an answer here, solution. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm angry, I feel numb, I feel disgusted, I feel horrified, and sometimes I feel all of these things at once.
You can call me crazy, but for an honest, open discussion, I think someone who's having multiple feelings all at once, it's probably not the best time for discussion. You should sit back, sleep on it, get your thoughts and feelings in order. While emotions can be a good driver for motivating somebody, I don't think of them usually as being for facilitating actual logical discussion and decision making. Again, as an impetuous, moving forward, but not the actual discussion for concrete details and policies. But we'll continue.
On the most basic level, as a mother and as a human, I'm protective of my children and protective of yours too. And I'm ashamed at what's become normal in our country. It's not normal, it's enough.
As a liberal, I assume a liberal, I find it interesting you're going to protect my children, since I assume you don't carry a weapon, and your only solutions will be for meaningless gun control that won't accomplish any safety. But I was encouraged by you saying that enough is enough. Maybe you've seen the light. You've realized that after shooting after shooting after shooting, the left keeps pushing these meaningless laws, and the right shuts them down. Maybe you're going to explore a new option. Maybe there is some common ground that you're willing to explore with us.
This is not about the media and video games glorifying and encouraging violence. I mean, it is and it's not.
It's interesting for me to hear someone from the left admit that they think that media can play a part in this. In fact, it's kind of weird because a lot of conservatives and libertarians will point to certain studies and say there's nothing to it. Video games and things aren't linked to violence. I tend to agree with her that I think there is something to it. I mean, we're just animals, and you can go to something as basic as panda bears. They talk about how pandas, for whatever reason in captivity, aren't reproducing, aren't mating, and they have to show them video of pandas mating so that the actual live pandas know what to do and can mate. We learn through watching, whether in reality or in television or other media. We learn what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and we learn behavior that way. So I'm a little encouraged that she may acknowledge that in the United States, a country with over 200 years of history, with lots and lots of gun ownership, gun violence and mass school shootings have only been an issue in the last couple decades. Maybe it's not being awash in guns that's the problem, but it's something else deeper in society. So I'm encouraged that she acknowledges it's a problem or a potential problem to be explored. And I don't think there should be legal restrictions necessarily on the First Amendment, but societal pressure saying this is not acceptable, we don't want to see this, I think would be fine. I'm not so encouraged that she views it as a problem, she views it as a contributing factor, and yet she doesn't want to discuss it. That's disturbing because I'm curious what that means she is interested in discussing.
It's not about toxic masculinity, although that's something we need to discuss as well.
Now, I would imagine she would think that masculinity has been toxic for most, if not all, of American history. So again, why would this last couple of decades, what has changed in this last couple of decades as opposed to the rest of our history? I'm not surprised to hear someone talk about toxic masculinity as being a problem. Maybe labeling masculinity as toxic is part of the problem that's driving most of these young white men into anger and shooting sprees. Let's see what else. That's just two. Let's see if there's anything else.
The lack of mental health care for people in this country who need it is astounding and it is horrifying. But that's not what's causing these problems right now.
That's unfortunate. Because it's probably a place where we could certainly find common ground, and you certainly seem to think it is a contributing factor of some degree just to mass shootings and school shootings. I think we can agree that your average person of sound mind and body doesn't just decide to pick up a gun and go shoot up a school. Something has happened to them, probably a history of a series of events that have happened to them over time that have changed their perception and their view of reality to get them to the point where they think that is an appropriate action. Now there may be Some people, a terrorist attack or something where they have a deliberate reason, that it's not necessarily caused by some kind of mental illness. But I think for the vast majority of school shootings like this, there is a history of some sort that could be looked at.
These are all contributing factors to a larger problem, but we don't have the ability to solve all of them all together today.
No, and we don't have to. We don't have to solve all of them today, but we could. You want to talk about a discussion and finding common ground. These are all contributing factors in your mind. I'm willing to discuss at least some of them. You would think that this would be an area we should focus on where we can make progress. I have a feeling, since you're saying these are not what you want to talk about, you're going to go to something stupid. Please don't go to something stupid like meaningless gun control.
What I want to talk about is a set of actions that we can actually take so that parents and children and all of us don't have to experience these kinds of shootings. Specifically,
please don't say something stupid. Don't say some meaningless gun control. Come up with something reasonable and effective. All right, here it goes.
With the AR-15 rifle.
God damn it. I thought you were coming up with something serious here. And you're going to... I'm so disappointed. Not surprised, but disappointed.
These kinds of mass killings would not happen without this kind of weapon.
It's unfortunate she hasn't done any research or doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She's probably never heard of a few minor events in U.S. history, like the Columbine High School shooting. If we scroll down here, let's see. A 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a 9mm carbine with, hey, look at that, with 10-round magazines. So did not have, it was fully compliant with some of these expanded magazine restrictions. This guy had a Tech-9 semi-automatic handgun and a double-barreled sawed-off shotgun. So no AR-15s or anything even close to an AR-15 here. Well, Columbine probably wasn't a big deal. They only killed 15 people there. I wonder if there's anything else. Oh, what's this? Virginia Tech. Maybe she hasn't heard about that. That only had 33 deaths, so it probably didn't hit her radar either. Now let's see. Use a .22 caliber pistol and a 9mm pistol. No AR-15s there. Wait. Oh, the Washington Navy Yard shooting. Remington 870. So that's a pump action, simple, kind of a common hunting weapon. I know that liberals like to talk about how they don't want to restrict hunting rights. This guy used a Remington 870, and then after he killed a guard, he also used the guard's pistol. No AR-15s there. 13 deaths. So if we're talking about actual solutions to mass shootings, and she's saying that they all have in common AR-15s, she's full of shit, and she's being disingenuous. She's not actually trying to solve the problem. She's, for whatever reason, trying to make this a political issue that does not solve the problem. You can make up your mind as to why, what may be motivating her, but it's obviously not actually solving the problem, because her proposal here is not. But she said she wants to present concrete actions that we can take. So this is just one action. Maybe the next one will be better. Let's see.
First, here are some statistics that we need to process. Americans make up about 4% of the world's population, but we own about 40% of the world's privately held firearms. America is indeed number one in gun ownership. Americans on average have 88 guns per 100 people. The number 2 country has 55 guns per 100 people, and that country is Yemen.
Careful. You're getting dangerously close to calling that a shithole nation, and you wouldn't want to do that.
The US has almost 6 times the gun homicide rate of Canada, 7 times that of Sweden, and 16 times that of Germany.
So what you're presenting here is correlation, not causation. You're trying to imply that because these nations have presumably lower gun ownership rates than the United States and lower murder homicide rates, or firearm deaths, not quite sure which one she said, that somehow it's because of that, and if the U.S. lowered its gun ownership rate, our gun death rate would go down as well. But you can just as easily find other evidence that shows the opposite. For example, here you can see the increasing number of guns per person in the United States, pretty dramatic increase in a 10-year period, and a very steep decrease in the gun homicide rate per 100,000 people. Or again, same period, the number of privately owned firearms increased over that time period 56%, and the gun homicide rate dropped by 49%. Again, that's not causation, but that would be a correlation that would counter the one that she was trying to push.
I feel helpless and hopeless.
And that would be because instead of working with conservatives to come up with common ground on the other three topics you've mentioned, or other factors that may go into these school shootings, you're focusing on dead-end, meaningless gun control proposals that have no chance of passing, and even if they did pass into law, would actually have no impact on school shootings. That's why you're feeling that way, in case you're wondering.
But it turns out we can do more. We have to do more. The majority of Americans, including a majority of Republicans, want laws protecting us from these kinds of guns getting into the hands of people who should not have access to them.
Yes, absolutely. I think just about every American wants to make sure that there are laws and procedures in place to make sure that people who want to go shoot up schools and shoot children are unable to do so. We can all agree on that. The problem, the devil, is in the details here, because you and your ilk are not honest brokers in this discussion, and are not actually pushing for legislation that will meet that end. But hey, we're over halfway through this video with multiple things you're going to push, and I haven't heard anything except for something about AR-15s. But maybe the actual concrete details that always is the hang-up on these kind of discussions, maybe that's coming up.
But do you know why these laws are so hard to change?
Wait, what law are we changing? I thought we were talking about making new laws to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals. Now you're saying that people are stopping us from changing laws. You haven't even said what law is being proposed. Before we start talking about who's hindering the progress, let's talk about what laws you want to enact that will stop school shootings.
Here it is. The National Rifle Association, the NRA, donates money, millions of dollars, to politicians. And in turn, those politicians vote to protect the financial interests of the NRA and the gun lobbyists.
That's not quite true. The NRA is a political organization made up of dues-paying members, and the NRA fights for rights and the agenda that the members want. It's not about fighting for the Political Action Committee or fighting for the NRA. It's fighting for its members. And if the members didn't like what the NRA was doing, they wouldn't pay and renew their membership. This is like Everytown USA is on the gun control side and has dues-paying members that join. Now, the only reason the NRA is so successful is because they don't back down or give an inch when these stupid proposals come forward for gun control that have no actual effect on gun violence. Now, I think HuffPo is garbage, but she may think of it as a reliable source. Pew Research explains how and why Pew's estimate that the NRA has 14 million members may have been wrong, but was actually right. The NRA claims to have only 5 million members, which is still pretty significant. But millions more people will tell pollsters they're members even when they are not. So that's how it ends up being a kind of a soft 14 million supporters saying that they are members of the NRA. Now, is that unusual or is it inappropriate for an organization to represent the collective voting power of 5 to 14 million people? The politicians, while I'm sure they appreciate donations to their campaigns, and the NRA has in the past donated to Democrats that did not pursue a gun control agenda, although it's becoming more and more rare because very few Democrats will get elected or will even bother running unless they are full-throated supporters of gun control. But that's not inappropriate. That's like any other organization that tries to push for the beliefs of people. It's a, if anything, the liberals should be very happy. This is a grassroots, bottom-up organization that's representing millions of dues-paying members. And that's one of the reasons they have so much political clout. It's easy for someone to say, yeah, I support this or I support that. When people pay money to be a member of this organization, it shows that they have skin in the game and are more willing to act. And the NRA members are very likely to act by going to the ballot box, and making their voices heard, which is why they are respected and feared by politicians. That's not inappropriate. That's democracy in action. The voice of the people being heard. She rambles a bit about states that have congressmen and senators that receive money from the NRA, which is irrelevant, so I'm skipping it.
We are not being accurately represented by our elected leaders. How can we change that?
This is like people complaining that exit polls made it look like Hillary, or polls before the election showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win, but she lost the election, so something must have been nefarious or wrong with the actual election because it didn't match up with the polls. You should know what the answer is. If the people didn't think that their actual beliefs were being represented, they would be voting these people out of office. Now, you can show polls like the one you mentioned earlier. Well, the American people support laws that keep weapons out of the hands of school shooters. Yes, people will support it when you present it that way. But when you start actually, what bill? Is the bill just going to say that? No. But when they actually start coming out with their concrete proposals, suddenly you start seeing drop-off in support. And not only drop-off in support, it might be something like climate change, where, yes, in general, the voters will say, yes, we believe climate change is real, we believe it's created by by mankind, and we support the government doing something about it. But that support may be a mile wide and an inch deep. There are other more important things in their prioritization, and they vote for those more pressing needs as opposed to this rather nebulous thing that I've been told it's important, and everyone else is important, I'll say it's important too, but realistically, I support gun rights or abortion or campaign finance or universal health care, whatever it happens to be. Climate change is low on people's priority list. So, you know what the answer is. If those people really aren't representing your beliefs, or realistically representing the beliefs of the majority of the voting citizens in your district, then they'd be voted out. That's what makes you angry, because it's not a popular enough opinion. Your side is not popular enough to actually throw people out of office.
We can do what Josh Gad, whose close friend lost a child in the shooting Wednesday, has vowed to do. Make it your life's goal to support and vote for every single person who challenges a politician with NRA money behind them.
I thought we were talking about concrete steps and proposals to take to end school shootings. Now we're just talking about voting politicians backed by the NRA out of office. What proposal do you have that you're putting forward that the NRA is saying that they don't support? You haven't put anything forward yet. Wait, let me go back. Maybe I missed something. Let's go back.
What I want to talk about is a set of actions that we can actually take so that parents and children and all of us don't have to experience these kinds of shootings, specifically with the AR-15 rifle.
So your solution to school shootings is to ban or regulate or do something about AR-15 rifles and vote against NRA-backed politicians, and that will solve the problem of school shootings. Why can't you be honest and say what policies you support, or what policies the politicians you want to see elected into office support? I mean, NRA-backed politicians, while some of them are pushing for further gun rights, like in my state, they're talking about instead of having to, you pay $35 or whatever, and they do a quick background check, and they give you a permit to carry a concealed weapon that's good for several years. They're talking about just making it that it's constitutional carry. Instead of having to pay $35 every couple of years and having to renew your license every once in a while, you're assumed you have the right to carry a weapon as long as you're not a felon or mentally incompetent or illegal for whatever reason. It's not on me to just waste money every once in a while and hope I renew it. It's a felony for me to carry a weapon if I'm not eligible to. But some politicians don't even advocate. They're just stopping meaningless gun regulations. So I don't see how your proposals aren't really solving anything. They're not even really proposals.
There is a mass school walkout being organized by the people behind the Women's March. The hashtag is National School Walkout. Say yes to civil disobedience. Walk out. Sit down, stand up, encourage others to do the same, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes to accomplish what? You're talking about civil disobedience, walking out. In furtherance of what? You've presented nothing. Look, there have been protests in the past that actually had a specific goal. They still seem to have this mindset. You're not even old enough to have been around, like in the 60s, talking about protesting the Vietnam War, where at least they could say, the war is unjust, we went out of it, and we're angry. Now you're like the cartoon character just running around saying, I'm mad as hell, and somebody better do something about it. What? There's nothing concrete that you're proposing here. It's just meaningless words. And it kind of reminds me of this lady here.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment, steps.
I mean, she's accomplishing just about as much as you are, and her argument is just about as coherent as yours. She's not happy. She's there protesting. She's making a lot of noise, but ultimately achieving nothing. So congratulations. At least you're not alone in your meaningless virtue signaling. And that's pretty much it. The rest is just talking about pro-gun control websites and links you can go to and how you can support the Grok Nation. But that's it. She didn't actually have anything. And that's why nothing gets accomplished in this stupid, meaningless, circular discussion, this debate, because one half of the actors, the people proposing gun control legislation, aren't actually doing it in good faith trying to solve the problem.